Tales of Mithrym.
At the Sign of the Running Horse, narrated by Dolynuik, Part 4, Badge. Quite unbeknownst to the people inside, a large carriage had just pulled up outside the tavern. Lanterns hung from brackets at its side illuminated a plaque that declared Alsager City Watch. A group of armed wardens disembarked, holstered fire wands at their sides, and dispersed around the tavern, save for two. One, tall and thin, had a dignified air and an expression of distrust about her, while the other, a big, stocky lad, followed behind her with a permanent frown fixed on his face. He was staring at the tavern's door as if trying to see if he could shoot lightning at it from his eyes. Meanwhile, inside, the assembled patrons continued their drinking, smoking, dancing, and eating without a care. "Come along, Boris," said the captain as she started towards the door. "And look, I know that you have a bone to pick with necromancers and their ilk, but try and keep that temper of yours in check. Do you understand? Don't expect any mercy from me if you step out of line on this one. You'll be transferred to some backwater dump immediately." "But sir," said Boris plainly, "we're already in a backwater dump, aren't we?" She rolled her eyes. "Don't get smart with me, lad. Did you hear what I said?" "Yes, sir," said Boris with a nod. "I'll behave." "Good." They reached the door and the captain gripped the knob. "Then let's catch that nasty creature. We'll seal it in a lead cell and throw away the key. Or we'll put it out of its misery," whispered Boris coldly from behind her as she pulled on the door. Inside, Alvin was starting to wonder whether his fatigue was finally starting to drive him mad. He decided to call it a night and head straight for his bed and get a good sleep. Cyrus, the bartender, had come over to stand near him. He was standing right next to Alvin and he was staring at the door. For a moment, it seemed to Alvin that the man's eyes had turned completely black, without a spot of white that could be seen on them. Alvin rubbed his own eyes. He was definitely tired. It was the only explanation. Still, his curiosity got the better of him as he wondered just what the bartender was so engrossed in looking at. He followed Cyrus's stare and looked at the entrance of the bar. The door was closed shut. But no. The door was suddenly and sharply opened, revealing two figures clad in dark coats, breeches, and boots. Each wore a tricorn hat. They were wardens, officers of the law. Alvin recognized them immediately, as anyone would. The big one, a young man, followed the woman into the room. Alvin was extremely surprised to find yet another big, stocky young man in the same room, and he wondered about the diet in this part of the country that produced such a high number of giants. The woman was older, and she surveyed the room with a stern gaze. Alvin always had trouble telling the age of older women, but she was quite striking, and her poise exuberated a sense of command. Alvin had met women like her on the battlefields, women who could command anyone and fought shoulder to shoulder in the thick of it. Alvin snapped his attention back to Cyrus and breathed with relief to find that his mind must have been playing tricks on him after all. Cyrus was looking perfectly normal as he was taking orders from people again. Whatever Alvin had seen before, the effect had worn off. The big guy took a table by the door. Nearly all tables were occupied, so he had to share with an old man who had passed out from gin. The woman, however, took up the seat next to Alvin. He tried not to mind her much as she settled into her seat and he scraped at his bowl and scooped up some of the now cold soup. But he lowered his spoon as he began to hear what she was saying, and he could not help but look at her. "Oh my," said the captain. "I can't believe there would be such a high-ranking military officer in a place like this. What an odd stroke of luck." Alvin put down his spoon, dusted off his hands, and extended his right arm towards her. "Good evening, ma'am. I'm Lieutenant Alvin Ranley, late of His Majesty's—" She waved away the formality. "Pleased to meet you," he finished. The captain smiled and nodded courteously as she shook Alvin's hand. "The pleasure is all mine, I assure you," she said with a smile. "And it's an honor. I'm Joyce White, Warden Captain of the Alsager City Guard." "Alsager?" Alvin started. "Isn't that a bit far from here? What are Alsager wardens doing all the way out here?" She chuckled. "A bit blunt, aren't we, sir? But I suppose it's to be expected from such a battle-hardened young fellow as yourself." Alvin laughed a dry laugh. "Pardon me, Captain. I'm afraid that my years in the war taught me anything but manners. How about you let me buy you that drink as an apology?" "I'll accept that," the captain smiled, and then winked. on the condition that you'll let me buy your dinner to express my gratitude as a patriot for your service to this great nation." Elvin paused for a moment, then shrugged. "As you wish." "Thank you," she said. "So, how many years?" "5, I think." "That's nearly a quarter of your life, surely." Elvin turned and gave her a curious look and said, "That's one way of putting it, I suppose, but yes, about that." "Where are you from, if you don't mind me asking?" "I'm from the West." "I can't say that it shows in your accent, does it? Did you straighten it out in the barracks?" "I did, actually," nodded Elvin as he played with his soup again. "The men I was with, for some reason, never seemed to be from the West. They were mostly from the Midlands." The captain's eyes fell upon the short sword attached to Elvin's waist. "That's an unusual-looking blade."
Tales of Mithrym are written by Jimmy Clephane. Mithrym is a fantasy world built for the Dungeon Room role-playing game system. To find out more about the world of Mithrym, or to try out the game, go to www.mithrym.com.